Today's case takes us to England, to the peaceful town of Bushey in Hertfordshire, where a quiet family home became the scene of unimaginable horror. A former soldier, armed with a crossbow and a terrifying plan, changed lives forever. This is the heartbreaking story of the Hunt family murders. Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where I tell true crime stories with the utmost care and respect for the victims and bearable for my community. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It truly helps me continue bringing these important stories to you. These cases deserve to be remembered. Now, settle in and let's begin. On the afternoon of July 9th, 2024, British police were dispatched to a quiet residential street, Ashland Close, nestled in the peaceful town of Bushey. Officers had been warned that the situation was serious, but nothing could have prepared them for the horror that awaited behind the front door of one unassuming home. Just before 4:07 p.m., emergency services received a call that would set off a race against time. The woman on the line, Hannah Hunt, was terrified. She told the operator she feared she was about to die. The urgency in her voice left no room for hesitation. Dispatchers immediately traced the address and sent multiple officers to the scene. At the entrance, they discovered Hannah, still alive but barely clinging to life. A crossbow bolt was lodged in her chest, her breathing shallow, her pulse faint. Tragically, this was only the beginning. As officers moved deeper into the house, they uncovered the bodies of two more women in an adjacent room. One, a woman in her 20s, had suffered the same fate as Hannah, a single crossbow bolt to the chest. Her arms were bound behind her back with silver duct tape, and her ankles had also been tied, suggesting she had been restrained before the attack. The third victim, an older woman believed to be their mother, had endured a brutal assault. She bore multiple stab wounds to her hands, knees, back, and torso, injuries consistent with someone who had fought desperately to defend herself. Within minutes, the home was surrounded by dozens of officers. The level of violence was staggering. And when Hannah succumbed to her injuries, it marked the third death in what was now a confirmed triple homicide, with the killer still at large. As the investigation escalated, armed police began canvassing the neighborhood, urging residents to remain indoors and asking if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual. Several neighbors were called hearing screams, but none had realized the severity of what was unfolding just a few doors away. Officers also requested dashcam and doorbell footage, hoping that somewhere in the digital trail, a clue might emerge. Inside the home, police had found three women, all from the same family. The mother, Carol Hunt, was 61 years old. Her daughters, Louise aged 25 and Hannah 28, had both been killed alongside her. The only surviving members of the Hunt family were John Hunt, Carol's devoted husband, and their youngest daughter, Amy. By sheer circumstance, neither had been home when the attack unfolded. Naturally, investigators had to consider every possibility. Detectives quickly ruled John Hunt out. Not only was he deeply devoted to his family, but he had also been working that evening with a solid alibi to support his whereabouts. The Hunt family lived in a quiet corner of Bushey, in a home filled with love and laughter. John Hunt, a well-known BBC racing commentator, was a familiar voice to many across the UK. His charisma and passion for the sport had made him a respected figure in the world of broadcasting. Carol, though more private, was known for her unwavering support of her daughters, each of whom was carving out her own path. Hannah worked as a beautician, while Louise had recently launched her own dog grooming business, operating out of the family's backyard under the name Groom and Glow, a venture that had quickly become popular among local pet owners. They were, by all accounts, a typical British family, full of ambition, warmth, and close-knit bonds. Louise Hunt was known for her warmth, her work ethic, and her deep love for animals. After spending time in the salon industry, she made a heartfelt shift in 2020, launching her own dog grooming business, a move that reflected not only her entrepreneurial spirit, but also her passion for caring for others, especially the four-legged kind. She even trained in pet first aid, ensuring every animal in her care was treated with the utmost attention and safety. Clients adored her, not just for her grooming skills, but for her kindness and her listening ear. Outside of work, Louise spent most of her time with her tight-knit family, her close circle of friends, and at Bushey Grove Gym, where she found balance and routine. But in 2022, Louise met someone who would change the course of her life, and not in the way anyone had hoped. His name was Kyle Clifford, and from the beginning, there were whispers of concern. Kyle, born on April 5, 1998, in Enfield, just north of London, had a reputation that preceded him. Enfield, like many commuter towns, offered little in the way of distraction, and Kyle often found himself in trouble. He was known for his short temper, especially in emotional situations, and many who knew him growing up described him as the kind of person you'd rather avoid. He had briefly served in the British Army, specifically in the Queen's Dragoon Guards, a regiment known as the Welsh Cavalry. But his time there was short-lived. Fellow soldiers described him as immature, volatile, and obsessed with violent content. He reportedly struggled with basic military concepts and barely passed training. His behavior earned him few friends, and many labeled him a misogynist, uncomfortable to be around. By 2022, Kyle was out of the military and back in Enfield, unemployed and directionless. He eventually found work as a security guard, but his reputation followed him: moody, arrogant, and quick to anger. Socially, he was awkward and unpredictable, often lashing out when things didn't go his way. His childhood had been marked by instability. The family moved frequently, disrupting friendships and routines. When they finally settled, 6 people were crammed into a 3-bedroom home, a detail that hinted at deeper tensions. And yet, in early 2023, Kyle and Louise's friendship turned into something more. At first, Louise was drawn to the softer side he occasionally revealed, the moments of vulnerability that made her believe she could help him change. But as the months passed, that tenderness gave way to something far more troubling. Kyle's anger began to surface, and with it came controlling behavior. He told Louise not to wear makeup or revealing clothes, insisting she was for his eyes only. He grew possessive, resenting her independence, even though he didn't live with her. Worse still, Kyle became increasingly obsessed with online content promoting misogynistic ideologies. Friends noticed he was consuming videos from influencers who pushed extreme, toxic beliefs, and this only seemed to fuel his rage and deepen his sense of entitlement. After 18 months, the relationship had become strained. Louise, still deeply in love, began to see that Kyle was not the man she had hoped he could become. Her family and friends had long been concerned, quietly hoping she would find the strength to walk away. But as many know, first love can be blinding, and Louise struggled to let go. This was her first serious relationship, and the emotional weight of ending it was almost too much to bear. In fact, shortly before the breakup, she was so overwhelmed that she accidentally crashed her car into a telephone pole, a moment that underscored just how emotionally fragile she had become. Finally, on June 26, 2024, Louise found the courage to end the relationship. It was a painful decision, but one she believed was necessary for her safety, her peace, and her future. What she didn't know was that Kyle wasn't ready to let go. When Louise finally found the strength to end the relationship, she did so with care and compassion, hoping to soften the blow and preserve a sense of dignity for them both. In a heartfelt message, she told Kyle that while she still loved him, she needed to step away for her own sanity, her own health, and her future. She expressed hope that, perhaps one day, if they both worked on themselves, something good could come of it. But for now, she needed space. Kyle's initial response was surprisingly calm. He thanked her for her honesty, said he loved her, and wished her healing. But that moment of grace was fleeting. Within hours, his tone shifted dramatically. He began flooding Louise with messages, hundreds of them, unable to accept the rejection. His heartbreak quickly turned to rage, not just toward Louise, but toward her family and friends, whom he blamed for encouraging her to leave him. In the days that followed, Kyle's thoughts grew darker. He became consumed by the belief that Louise had been taken from him, that her loved ones had poisoned her against him. And with that belief came a dangerous obsession, one rooted in revenge. He spiraled into a state of bitterness and despair, convinced that without Louise, he was nothing. And if he couldn't have her, then no one could. If he couldn't be with her, then he didn't want to live at all. By June 30th, 2024, Kyle had made a chilling decision. He began researching ways to carry out an attack, searching online for weapons, methods of restraint, and tools that could be used to harm. After weighing his options, he settled on a crossbow and bolts, which he purchased online for just over £350. He also ordered a butchering knife and, later, an air pistol, all delivered discreetly to his home. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was premeditated, calculated, and deliberate. He waited for the items to arrive, knowing full well what he intended to do. On July 6th, surveillance footage captured Kyle at a local hardware store, carefully selecting rope. He stood there, debating whether to buy 2 smaller packs or 1 large roll. The next day, he purchased 2 tanks of fuel and a single roll of duct tape. By now, his weapons had arrived, and his plan was nearly complete. In the days leading up to the attack, Kyle wrote several letters, some to his family, others to himself. In one, he thanked his loved ones for being part of his life, insisting that none of them had failed him. In another, addressed to himself, he apologized for not giving himself the chance to heal, admitting that he saw no future without Louise. He wrote, "I don't want to live my life without her. Nothing I can think of can make me happy. This is my decision, to just be at peace." On the night of July 8th, just hours before the murders, Kyle sat at his computer and searched for something unexpected, explicit content involving prison staff and inmates, possibly trying to understand what life behind bars might look like. Then, he checked the schedule for upcoming racing events, because he knew exactly where Louise's father, a well-known commentator, would be the next day. In the days leading up to the murders, Kyle Clifford's obsession escalated into meticulous planning. This wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. He monitored Carol Hunt's social media, tracked John Hunt's work schedule, and even checked weather forecasts, ensuring nothing would interfere with what he was preparing to do. On the morning of July 9th, surveillance footage captured Kyle at a garden center, pushing a pram alongside family members. To anyone watching, he appeared relaxed, just another man enjoying a summer afternoon. But behind the calm facade, he was quietly preparing to carry out something unthinkable. At 1:37 p.m., he parked his car a short distance from the Hunt family home. He waited, watching carefully to confirm what he already suspected, that John Hunt, Louise's father, was away for work. Once certain the coast was clear, Kyle drove away, only to return later, carrying a bag of Louise's clothes and a thank you card addressed to her parents. It was a calculated move, a gesture designed to disarm suspicion. When Carol Hunt opened the door, she was surprised to see him. But the bag and the card suggested peace, not danger. Kyle's demeanor was warm. His tone was friendly. Trusting the gesture, Carol welcomed him inside. But the moment Kyle stepped through the doorway, everything changed. His expression hardened. And without hesitation, he attacked Carol, stabbing her repeatedly until she collapsed. With Carol Hunt already dead, Kyle briefly stepped outside to retrieve the next weapon he had prepared, a crossbow. Outside, Louise was still in the garden working, completely unaware that her mother had just been murdered and that her ex-boyfriend was now inside the house, waiting. When Louise eventually stepped back into the home, Kyle ambushed her. He bound her wrists and ankles with duct tape, gagged her, and over the course of the next 2.5 hours, subjected her to horrific abuse. Then, as the afternoon wore on, Hannah Hunt arrived home. She entered the house expecting a normal evening, perhaps her mother preparing dinner, her sister nearby. What she walked into was a nightmare. Realizing the danger, Hannah managed to send a desperate message to her boyfriend. "Call the police immediately to mine now. Kyle's here." But before she could escape, Kyle turned the crossbow on her, firing a single bolt into her chest. Though mortally wounded, Hannah managed to crawl through the house, discovering the bodies of her mother and sister. In those final moments, the fear and heartbreak she must have felt is unimaginable. With the last of her strength, she dialed 999. Emergency services arrived quickly, but it was too late. Within minutes, Hannah succumbed to her injuries, joining Louise and Carol in death. The officers who entered the scene were reportedly shaken to their core. The brutality was so severe that several required counseling in the aftermath. Given the public nature of Kyle's relationship with Louise and prior concerns about his behavior, he was quickly identified as the prime suspect. But by the time police arrived, he had vanished. A citywide manhunt was launched, with armed officers and specialist teams deployed across North London and Hertfordshire.
I'm Chief Superintendent John Simpson, Head of Local Policing for Hertfordshire Constabulary. Police were called to a property in Ashland Close just before 7 p.m. last night. Officers attended alongside colleagues from the East of England Ambulance Service and, on arrival, found 3 women with serious injuries. Sadly, despite their best efforts, the women, who are believed to be related, died a short time later at the scene. The victims are aged 25, 28 and 61. Our overarching objective today is to protect public safety and to locate Kyle Clifford, who is wanted in connection with the murder of the 3 women in what we believe is a targeted incident. We have extensive police resources deployed to various locations in North London and also the Bushey area of Hertfordshire. The manhunt also involves armed police officers and specialist search teams responding at pace in the wake of what has been an horrific incident, involving what is currently believed to be a crossbow, but other weapons may also have been used. If members of the public see Kyle Clifford, they are urged not to approach him at any point and to dial 999 immediately. Kyle, if you're seeing or hearing this, please make contact with the police via 999.
The community was shaken, and additional patrols were deployed to reassure residents and gather leads. Surveillance footage soon revealed a chilling detail. Kyle had left the Hunt family home at 6:55 p.m., just 2 minutes after murdering Hannah. A neighbor's camera captured him walking calmly toward his car, his crossbow hidden beneath a white cloth, as if nothing had happened. Once police reviewed the footage, and the surviving members of the Hunt family confirmed Kyle as the likely suspect, he seemed to vanish without a trace. The search began in earnest the next morning, 14 miles east of Bushey, where 10 armed officers descended on Kyle's family home in Enfield. Inside, they found letters addressed to his relatives and to himself, confirming what they already feared. Kyle had murdered 3 innocent women and was now armed, dangerous, and on the run. Later that day, authorities received an anonymous tip. Someone believed Kyle was hiding in a cemetery in the hilly fields area of Enfield, just a short walk from his family's home. It wasn't the most discreet hiding place, but it soon became clear why he had chosen it. Kyle had no intention of walking away alive. Police quickly surrounded the cemetery, preparing for a possible confrontation. But before they could reach him, Kyle took matters into his own hands. He reloaded the crossbow, turned it on himself, and fired into his chest, attempting to end his life. But the shot didn't kill him. Instead, it left him permanently paralyzed from the waist down, the bolt having pierced his spinal cord. He also sustained injuries to his vocal cords, leaving him unable to speak for long or with any strength. Almost 24 hours after the manhunt began, Kyle Clifford was found collapsed in the cemetery, surrounded by police and paramedics. He was rushed to Royal London Hospital, where he remained under 24/7 guarded watch. The community was stunned. Neighbors described a night filled with sirens, helicopters, and fear, unable to sleep as the search unfolded just outside their doors. The Home Secretary called the tragedy appalling and deeply disturbing. Over the next 2.5 months, Kyle underwent multiple surgeries and became the subject of the most resource-intensive daily police watch in the force's recent history. On September 16th, 70 days after the murders, he was finally well enough to be interviewed.
Kyle, based on the evidence, this is a premeditated murder of 3 people. Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up the boys? From the moment that she sent you that text message at the end of June, you began to plan her murder? Yes? It's evident quite clearly from your purchase of the crossbow, from your purchase of the additional bolts, from the purchase of the gun and the knife, in the 2 weeks leading up to the murders. Do you agree? Do you agree that it shows that you only had one thing in mind, and that planning began when you purchased these items? You purchased rope and you purchased duct tape in order to restrain Louise and Hannah and Carol, didn't you? 6 days before this happened, you make these significant purchases that really only have one plausible explanation, didn't you? The only plausible explanation is that they were purchased in order for you to carry out these murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
You got to the address and you came well prepared. You came prepared with Louise's belongings, didn't you?
No comment.
Louise's belongings were your ticket into that address. Yes?
No comment.
You deceived your way into that address at the front door with Carol, pretending that you were having a civil and friendly conversation and returning Louise's property, and you'd even written out a thank you card. Yes?
No comment.
Look at your behaviour. Look how calmly and nonchalantly you walk away from that house. You've just killed 3 people and you stroll away like you're going down the shops. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a loss of control. You didn't go to the address and all of a sudden form this intent to kill Carol, kill Louise, kill Hannah. You'd gone there with that sole intention in mind. You went there. The CCTV footage shows throughout that you are cool, you are calm, you're collected, you're considered. There is nothing about that which suggests that you've gone there for anything else than to kill almost an entire family.
On Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, Kyle Clifford was formally charged with the murders of Carol and Hannah Hunt and the rape and murder of Louise Hunt. He was remanded into custody, where he would await trial, paralyzed, silent, and facing the consequences of a crime that had shattered a family and horrified a nation. Throughout the rest of the legal proceedings, Kyle refused to take full responsibility, avoiding direct answers and showing little acknowledgement of the devastation he had caused. On December 19, 2024, he appeared via video link at Cambridge Crown Court, where he initially pleaded not guilty to all charges. But on January 22, 2025, in a surprising turn, he changed his plea, admitting to the murders of Carol, Hannah, and Louise Hunt, while continuing to deny the charge of rape. His sudden admission of guilt wasn't seen as remorseful. Prosecutors and observers alike believed it was a strategic move, not an act of conscience. But he denied sexually assaulting Louise, forcing her grieving family to endure days of harrowing testimony in court. The Crown Prosecution Service chose to proceed with the rape charge. Kyle's trial for that offense began on March 3, 2025. He refused to attend any day of the proceedings. During the trial, the jury heard about his obsession, his manipulation, and his cold, calculated violence. They saw the extent of his planning, the deception he used to gain Carol's trust, and the brutality he inflicted on all 3 women. After a 4-day trial, the jury took just 45 minutes to return a verdict, guilty of sexual assault, adding to the charges he had already admitted. He was sentenced to life in prison for each of the 3 murders, with a whole life order, meaning he will never be eligible for parole. He also received 20 years for the sexual assault of Louise, 8 years for her false imprisonment, 1 year for possession of a crossbow, and 1 year for possession of a knife. These additional sentences extend his whole life order by 30 years, ensuring that Kyle Clifford will never walk free again. In his closing remarks, the judge described Kyle as a man soaked in self-pity who held utter contempt for women.
Clifford, on the 9th of July last year, you went to the home of your former girlfriend, Louise Hunt, and launched a murderous attack on her and her family. You first killed her mother, Carol, who even on that day showed you nothing but kindness in the moments before you attacked her. You raped and killed Louise, who had been as gentle as she could in ending her relationship with you after your arrogance and anger proved too much for her to stand. Then you murdered Hannah Hunt, who had done nothing to harm you save supporting her little sister. The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. This is no occasion to subject the family and friends of your victims to any delay or suspense. I therefore make clear at once that for each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released.
As the sentencing hearing reached its most emotional moment, John Hunt, husband to Carol and father to Louise and Hannah, stood before the court and delivered a statement that left the room in silence.
In court, John Hunt said he'd lost 3/4 of his family to Clifford, a psychopath who'd deceived them all. In an impact statement he read out, he said, "Just remember one thing, whatever misery lies ahead for you, on your dying day, there will be no release for you. The screams of hell, I can hear them now when they roll the red carpet out for you. Your miserable fate will last for eternity." Mr. Hunt praised the courage of his daughter Hannah, who, even as she lay dying, managed to call police to the house. He believes that Clifford had planned to wait there for his return and kill him too. His surviving daughter Amy said, "You ensured that my family endured their last moments alone and terrified. I always hoped that I'd be there to hold my mum's hand as she passed away. I only wish it had been me instead of them."
But just when you think the story ends there, there's one more twist. While researching this case, it was discovered that Kyle's own brother, Bradley Clifford, is also serving a life sentence for murder stemming from a case in 2018. While there are disturbing details about Kyle Clifford's family background, particularly his brother's case, I've made a conscious decision not to explore that in this video. Not because it isn't relevant, but because this story belongs to Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt. In time, I'll release a separate video that explores the broader patterns and influences surrounding this case. But for now, the one thing we should know is that when Kyle Clifford murdered Louise, Hannah, and Carol Hunt, his brother Bradley was already behind bars. But in a disturbing twist, it was later revealed that Kyle had contacted Bradley from prison in the weeks leading up to the murders, allegedly sharing his intentions. Bradley, knowing what his brother was planning, did nothing. It's a haunting detail. 2 brothers, both capable of premeditated murder, both leaving behind trails of devastation. The bravery of John and Amy Hunt is beyond words. To endure such loss and still stand with strength, to speak with clarity and compassion in the face of unimaginable grief, that is a testament to the human spirit. And in the end, Kyle Clifford didn't win. He didn't silence their love. He didn't erase their legacy. Because John, Amy, and all who loved Carol, Louise, and Hannah, they carry their memory forward. And that memory will never fade. In the aftermath, many tried to understand how someone could commit such acts. Kyle Clifford was described by prosecutors as narcissistic, controlling, and deeply misogynistic, a man who viewed women not as equals, but as possessions. He had a history of violent behavior, a fascination with online content promoting hatred, and a pattern of manipulating those around him. Though little is publicly known about his upbringing, reports suggest a troubled home environment, marked by instability and possible violence. It's believed this may have shaped his worldview, one where power was asserted through control and respect was demanded through fear. Rather than seeking help or growth, Kyle built a persona around dominance. He consumed content that reinforced his entitlement and anger, and when faced with rejection, he responded not with reflection, but with destruction. He met Louise Hunt, a woman described as kind, intelligent, and hardworking. But instead of rising to meet her strength, he tried to diminish it, isolating her, undermining her confidence, and attempting to make her feel small. When she finally found the courage to walk away, he made a choice, not just to hurt her, but to erase everything she loved. So, what are your thoughts on this case? If you found this story impactful, consider supporting my channel with a like, share, and subscribe to help me continue telling the stories that matter. Until my next video, stay safe and look after your loved ones.